For 4,500 years, the Great Pyramid of Khufu has stood at the edge of the Egyptian desert. Its 3 known chambers were charted by the 19th century. Its dimensions were measured to the millimeter. Its corridors were photographed, mapped, and indexed in every reference work on antiquity. And then, in 2017, a team of physicists found a 4th chamber that no one had ever seen, and which still, today, no one has. The chamber is at least 30 meters long. It sits directly above the ground gallery. It was confirmed by 3 independent research teams using the same physical principle applied with 3 different technologies in 2 different countries. It has not been opened, it has not been entered, and the reasons it remains sealed are stranger than the chamber itself. This is the story of a discovery made 8 years ago that has not been completed, not because no one wants to, because no one can. Yet, the Great Pyramid was built in the 26th century before Christ, during the reign of Khufu, known to the Greeks as Cheops. It stood, when complete, 481 feet tall. For nearly 4,000 years, it was the tallest structure on Earth. It is still the largest of the 3 pyramids at Giza. It is still the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that survives. Its base covers 13 acres. Its mass is estimated at 5.9 million tons. It is composed of roughly 2.3 million stone blocks, each one weighing between 2.5 and 80 tons. The mathematics of its construction have been argued about for 2 centuries. The labor required, the engineering, the logistics, none of it is even now fully resolved. But the building stands, and inside it holds 3 known chambers. The descending passage was probably the original entrance, sloping into the bedrock beneath the structure. The ascending passage leads, eventually, to the Grand Gallery, a corridor with a corbelled ceiling rising 28 feet above its floor. The Grand Gallery opens to the King's Chamber, which contains an empty granite sarcophagus. There is also the Queen's Chamber, lower and unfinished, and there are 5 smaller spaces above the King's Chamber, called relieving chambers, designed to redistribute the weight of the masonry above the burial vault. That was the inventory: 5 chambers, 3 corridors, 1 shaft. Until 2017, for 2 centuries before that, every chamber, every corridor, every hidden joint had been catalogued. Howard Vyse, in 1837, blasted his way through walls to reach the upper relieving chambers. John Perring, his colleague, drew the cross-sections that became the standard reference for the next 150 years. Petrie measured the exterior to within a centimeter. Borchardt corrected the angles. By 1925, every Egyptologist agreed the inside of the Great Pyramid was known. And then, in 1969, a Nobel laureate disagreed. Luis Alvarez, the same physicist who would later argue that an asteroid had ended the age of the dinosaurs, set up cosmic ray detectors inside the 2nd pyramid at Giza, that of Khafra. He was looking for hidden chambers. He found none. The technique worked. The pyramid was empty, or so the report concluded. No one tried it on Khufu's pyramid for nearly 50 years. Cosmic rays are subatomic particles that strike the upper atmosphere from deep space, producing showers of secondary particles. Among these are muons, heavier cousins of the electron, with a half-life of 2 microseconds. They travel near the speed of light. They penetrate matter much more efficiently than X-rays, and critically, they are absorbed less when they pass through empty space than when they pass through stone. If you place a detector inside or beside a structure, and if you wait long enough, the count of muons in each direction tells you, with statistical confidence, whether there is a hidden cavity in their path. The technique is called muography. It was invented in 1955. By 2015, 3 teams at Nagoya University in Japan, at the KHUFU Accelerator Laboratory, also in Japan, and at the CEA Atomic Energy Commission in France, were ready to apply it to the Great Pyramid. They formed a project. They called it ScanPyramids. The Nagoya team installed nuclear emulsion films inside the Queen's chamber in October 2015. The films were small, about 30 centimeters by 20, but they recorded every muon that passed through them, frozen in chemical traces, for the rest of time until they were retrieved. Each placement lasted about 2 months. After 2 months, the films had to be carried by hand from Egypt to Nagoya, where they were developed in a laboratory. The traces were scanned by automated microscopes. Each frame contained millions of muon tracks. The angles were reconstructed. The directions were mapped. After 8 months of accumulated data, in mid-2016, the team began to see something. Above the Grand Gallery, in the direction of the apex of the pyramid, there was a region where the muon flux was higher than the surroundings. More muons reaching the detector, less stone in their path. A void the team did not announce. They wanted independent confirmation. The KHUFU team, using a different kind of detector, a gas scintillator, installed equipment in the same chamber and ran a parallel experiment. After several months, KHUFU saw the same anomaly in the same place, with a different physics, with different software. Then the CEA team in France set up a 3rd generation of detector, a gas micromegas, outside the pyramid on the northern face. They reconstructed the geometry from a different angle. They saw the same void. 3 teams, 3 independent technologies, same anomaly, same location, same dimensions, within margins of error. On the 2nd of November 2017, the journal Nature published their results. The discovery was called the ScanPyramids Big Void. It was, the paper said, at least 30 meters in length. Its cross-section was comparable to that of the Grand Gallery itself. It was the first major internal structure discovered in the Great Pyramid since the 19th century, possibly since the year 820, when the Caliph al-Ma'mun forced an entrance through the northern face and reached the Grand Gallery for the first time in the historical record. The first explanation came quickly. Egyptologists, including those involved in the project, suggested that the void was probably a previously unknown relieving chamber. Above the king's chamber, there are 5 such structures designed to redistribute the enormous weight of the masonry above. The big void, they argued, might serve a similar purpose for the Grand Gallery. And then, the inconsistencies began. The 5 known relieving chambers above the king's chamber are flat, narrow spaces, corridors, more than chambers. The big void, by contrast, is described as having a cross-section comparable to the Grand Gallery itself, tall, deep, vaulted. That is not the geometry of a relieving structure. The known relieving chambers are accessible. Howard Vyse blasted his way into them in 1837, and his graffiti still remains on their walls. The big void has no known access. It is sealed. The known relieving chambers are referenced indirectly in architectural drawings recovered from other Old Kingdom mastabas. The big void has no precedent in the 4th dynasty, and there is one more anomaly. The relieving chambers above the king's chamber are oriented horizontally. They sit one above another, like floors of a building. The big void is angled. Its longitudinal axis matches the slope of the Grand Gallery beneath it, rising at 26 degrees toward the center of the pyramid. That is not a relieving chamber. A relieving chamber would not need to follow a corridor. The big void is following something. In 2018, the Egyptologist Bob Breyer proposed an alternative. The void is a secondary funerary chamber, perhaps a decoy, perhaps unused. Mark Lehner suggested a ceremonial space sealed at completion. Dieter Arnold proposed a construction tunnel never closed off. Robert Bauval, more controversially, argued for ritual cosmology, the void as alignment with celestial coordinates. An architectural prayer pointed at a particular star. 5 hypotheses. None of them by 2026 has been confirmed. None of them has been ruled out. In 2016, before the Big Void announcement, the same project had detected a smaller anomaly, a possible cavity behind the chevrons on the northern face of the pyramid. The chevrons are massive limestone blocks placed in a triangular arrangement above the original entrance, designed, like the relieving chambers, to redistribute weight away from the doorway below. For 7 years, that anomaly remained unconfirmed. The detection was real, but ambiguous. Was it a corridor, a void in the masonry, a miscalculation? In late 2022, the team returned with 2 new technologies. They brought a high-frequency ground-penetrating radar capable of mapping internal structure to within centimeters, and they brought a custom-designed endoscope only 5 millimeters in diameter, small enough to be inserted through any joint they could find. On the 2nd of February 2023, the radar identified an opening in the joint behind the lower chevron blocks. It was tight, it was narrow, it was passable for a thin instrument. On the 24th of February, they inserted the endoscope. The screen showed a corridor, 9 meters long, 2 meters wide, 2 meters tall, empty, vaulted ceiling, rough walls, not finished masonry. The space behind the northern chevrons, hidden for 4,500 years, looked back at the camera. The discovery was announced on the 2nd of March 2023 in the journal Nature Communications. The corridor was named the ScanPyramids North Face Corridor, the SPNFC. It was, the paper concluded, almost certainly a structural void, a method of relieving stress on the original entrance, deliberately built and then sealed when no longer needed during construction. The North Face corridor is now known. The endoscope produced video. The geometry is documented. The function, even if not certain, is consistent with engineering practice of the 4th dynasty. And this is important because the SPNFC was the test case. If the North Face corridor could be reached with an endoscope, perhaps the Big Void could too. The team began to look. They mapped every joint, every fissure, every microfault in the limestone above the Grand Gallery. They examined the masonry around the King's Chamber and the relieving chambers, hoping for a passage that would let them reach the Big Void without breaking stone. They found nothing. The Big Void remains in early 2026, exactly as it was in November 2017, detected, located, dimensioned, and sealed. The most cited explanation for the Big Void, that it is a relieving chamber, does not fit the evidence. There are 3 reasons. First, the geometry. Relieving chambers are horizontal. The Big Void is angled, rising 26 degrees through the masonry. No known relieving chamber in any Old Kingdom pyramid follows the slope of the corridor below it. Second, the scale. Relieving chambers above the King's Chamber are cramped, a few meters tall, a few meters wide. The Big Void is at least 30 meters long, with a cross-section comparable to the Grand Gallery, meaning roughly 8 meters in height at its center. That is not stress relief. That is a room. Third, the precedent. The 4th dynasty has been excavated extensively. Mastabas, smaller pyramids, mortuary temples, satellite structures, all documented. Nowhere in any of them is there a chamber matching this description. The Big Void is, in the strict architectural sense, anomalous. So if it is not a relieving chamber, what is it? The remaining hypotheses fall into 3 categories. The first is functional. The void served some practical role we no longer understand. A storage space, a construction void, an unused stage of an aborted plan. The second is ceremonial. The void was deliberately built and sealed without a body, perhaps as a decoy, perhaps as a ritual emptiness, symbol rather than tomb. The third category is simply unknown. The fourth dynasty was 4,500 years ago. Its religious and architectural conventions have been partially reconstructed and largely lost. There is no rule that says we must already have a category for what is in there. What we have instead is the second question. Not what the chamber is, but why we have not been allowed inside. There are three reasons the big void has not been opened. They are technical, political, and methodological. The technical reason: the Great Pyramid contains roughly 5.9 million tons of stone. Its structure has held for 4,500 years, but it is not unbreakable. The relieving chambers above the king's chamber show fissures in the granite that were already present, by some readings, before construction was complete. Any excavation that adds stress to the masonry risks cascading damage. The Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, since 2017, has required that any further investigation be non-destructive. No drilling, no removal of blocks, no widening of joints. The political reason: access to the Great Pyramid is controlled by a consortium of institutions: the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, the Supreme Council of Antiquities, the University of Cairo, and a rotating set of international academic partners. Decisions take years. Disagreements are common. Funding cycles do not match scientific cycles. Permission to use a non-destructive endoscope in 2023 took most of a decade to obtain. Permission to do anything more invasive has not been granted and is not in any clearly stated form being considered. The methodological reason: this is the deepest. The endoscope that visualized the North Face corridor in 2023 worked because there was a fissure between two of the chevron blocks. The endoscope was 5 millimeters wide. The fissure was wider. The instrument slipped through. The big void has no known fissure. The masonry around it, mapped and remapped between 2018 and 2024 with successively more precise techniques, has been intact at every joint. There is no opening through which a 5 millimeter instrument can pass. To reach the void, an opening must first be created, and that, by the technical and political constraints already named, is not currently permitted. The team is now developing a new generation of nanorobots, instruments under 1 millimeter in cross-section, designed to navigate hairline cracks at the limit of detection. The technology is not ready. The most optimistic estimates place its first deployment, if approved, sometime in the next decade. So this is the modern condition. We can detect what we cannot reach. We can image, with cosmic rays, a chamber 30 meters long, sealed inside a structure built when language itself was being written down for the first time. We can confirm its existence with 3 independent technologies. We can publish the results in the highest impact scientific journal in the world. And then we can stand outside on the same desert 4 kilometers from where the chamber waits and not enter. The Egyptians, who could not see inside, sealed the void on purpose. We, who can see, cannot. Whatever the big void contains, a body, a chamber, a deliberate emptiness, or a structural artifact never intended to mean anything to anyone, has been preserved exactly as it was, by accident of the same circumstances that prevent us from disturbing it. The pyramid keeps its own secrets. It has in this respect the patience that built it. The big void changes what we know about the inside of the Great Pyramid. It also changes what we expect from other ancient structures. Muography is now being applied to the bent pyramid at Dashur, where preliminary results suggest at least one previously undetected internal feature, to the pyramid of Khafre, where Alvarez found nothing in 1969, but where new instruments may find what older ones missed, to the step pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara, to pre-Columbian structures in Mexico, to Roman aqueducts, to medieval cathedrals, to the buried foundations of cities that have been continuously inhabited for so long that no excavation can be permitted at street level. Every megalithic structure is being reread. Each one might have its own big void, a chamber present but not catalogued. The catalogue, after 26 centuries, is not complete, and the lesson is more general. Every age believes it has finished examining its inheritance. Every age is eventually wrong. The Great Pyramid has been the most photographed, most measured, most debated structure in human history. It still surprised us in 2017 with a chamber 30 meters long. What else have we measured everything except? This is the first entry in the long archives. If you find these files worth keeping open, the records of what we have detected, recovered, and sometimes failed to enter, subscribe. New entries appear every Sunday. Each one is its own room. There are other things. In 2026 we can detect but cannot reach. The mass of dark matter pulling at the rotation of the Milky Way, present everywhere but visible nowhere. The signal called WOW, that arrived at the Big Ear radio telescope on the 15th of August, 1977, and has never been detected again, though it has been listened for ever since. The microbes that may or may not be suspended in 14-million-year-old water beneath 4 kilometers of Antarctic ice. The two additional voids that, according to ongoing muography, may yet exist deeper inside the Great Pyramid, beneath what we have already mapped. Anomalies too faint in 2026 to confirm or rule out. Detection is not understanding. The big void is the simplest case. A known shape, a known location, a known impossibility of access. The harder cases, the dark cases, the distant cases share its structure. We have, increasingly, the instruments to know that something is there. We do not yet have the instruments to know what it is. On the morning of the 2nd of November, 2017, the inside of the Great Pyramid changed. Not physically. The void had been there for 4,500 years. It had been there before the alphabet. It had been there before iron. It had been there before the founding of any city now standing. But for the first time, on that November morning, it was on the map. The map is open. The room is not. KHUFU, the pharaoh whose only certain portrait is a statuette the size of a closed fist, was buried somewhere in this complex. Two of his successors lie in pyramids that have been opened, examined, photographed, and stripped. KHUFU's chamber, the one with the empty granite sarcophagus, was reached in the 9th century by a caliph who broke through with hammers and fire, looking for treasure. There is nothing left there but stone. The big void has not been broken into. The chamber waits. Whoever built it to wait. 4,500 years of patience were already inscribed in its walls before we arrived with our cosmic ray detectors and our endoscopes and our funding committees and our publication deadlines. The pyramid can wait a little longer. In a desert, under stone older than alphabets, there is a room. We know its dimensions. We know its angle. We know it is empty of light. That is, for now, all we know.